What's up, everybody? Welcome. So, we're a little bit late to analysis. 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 You know, I didn't realize how to spell analyzing. How do you spell analyzing? I don't think I was spelling analyzing right, according to the computer spell check. Looks like analyzing. Mr. Wurstschemmel. Wurst. From time to time, like many other players, I glanced through my own games of the earlier years and returned to the Black Forest of Germany, studying the positions and variations which have gone out of practice. I attempt to restore them to find new ideas and plans. Fruit fly, screw you. I will kill you before the stream is over. Why don't you land on the wall? Huh? Alright. Analysis stream. 5/29/25. See. What's up, guys? I can see. Don't forget to hype train. Don't forget to subscribe. So we're gonna start with Astrobate. Astrobate game. Can you guys see the board alright? The board shows names. We can see names, we can see fruit flies don't bite. What a joke, man. Alright, so this is... Oh, lichess database? No. Man, that's a huge list of moves. No, it doesn't normally look so big, right? The first move. I just got bit by a fruit fly. It's not a coincidence when my hand is itchy. What's up, everybody? What's up, Astrobate, Redusu? So, for today, we have a game that was submitted, ironically, by... And Astrobate, did you pick this out on purpose? Did you do a Geller game on purpose? I mean, a Geller quote on purpose? Or is that just a coincidence? There are no coincidences, Astrobate. No vinegar in the hassle. No, we have it downstairs. No, someone made a trap, Mr. Slow. A trap was made, and 5 fruit flies have been captured. We're gonna trade them with the Russians, like a prisoner swap. No, it has been made. It has been made. It didn't work super well, but a handful of prisoners have been captured. I should bring, but I don't have enough. It's ironic. It's the first one I had in my room all day, just like they liked the stream or something. Goiter. So good to have Mr. Slow here, Astrobate, and we're gonna get started with your games. The I don't know. The last couple days I've been feeling real tired. Like I don't have enough iron in my blood or something. I need to drink more blood. All right. Speaking of fruit flies, I've got Mr. Slow submitting the Geller game. We've got Astrobate, Schumacher's Brilliancy, move 11 with the game. Power the New, who isn't really a subscriber, so if we're really bored, we can start doing games of people who aren't subscribers and F it up. Or maybe Power the New is a subscriber and he just doesn't communicate, but I don't know who he is. So we've got Nefedov. That was sent by Nefedov? That was sent by Nefedov. So you've got a game. Oh, you've got the game you beat Nefedov. He sent that game in, actually. He must have enjoyed it. Alright, let's see if the coffee helps. Alright, so this is Astrobate's game. First game for... Now, this is a C3 Sicilian. You know, it's funny, like, I always was annoyed by the C3 Sicilian. But when you sit on the white side of the board... When you sit on the white side of the board and you play this move, you realize how lame it is, you know? If you're used to playing the open Sicilian, I mean, this move it's pretty lame, honestly. You know, it borders on, like, feeling like totally harmless. You know, it's surprising how good the C3 Sicilian is. When you think about it, really. It is very surprising it's as good as it is, because it looks stupid, you know? But anyway, we're on the black side in this example game, and Astrobate plays. Well, the two most aggressive moves are both moves that take down White's central pawn, or attempt to do so. So, you know, before we criticize the C3 Sicilian, we just have to make the comment that it's true that C5 is probably not Black's best move. Sveshnikov might have a different opinion. I mean, you got to admit, though, it is slow. C3 feels very slow, you know, when you play it. You're not developing any pieces. I mean, Sveshnikov is not feeling anything right now. No, I was just really surprised. Like, the other day, I thought about playing it, and I looked at the board, and I was like, man, that's slow. Doesn't make it easy to play with Black. I mean, the Sicilian the problem is you're not developing your pieces. E5 is the best move for Black, for a reason, you know. But I played the Sicilian all my life, so C5 is risky. And okay, so White can get away with a slow move, C3. The point is now, Black has to play, you know, kind of dynamically to maintain an equal game. Because, well, C3 is usually the only slow move they're going to play. They're not going to continue to play slow moves, or like D3. Especially how I played Knight A3 against me after D5 takes, Queen takes. We had a game in like 1994 where I think it was actually this position where he played Knight A3. Andrei Karlov. Get the feeling that Karlov might have been one of Sveshnikov's students or something. Whatever. So we have C3, D5. Both Knight F6 and D5 put the most pressure on White. I think the Knight F6 is harder to play. It's harder to play because White remains with this scary space-gaining pawn. You know, at least D5. I always prefer D5 because it gets rid of said pawn. They push here. They play taxi driver variation. It's not. It's like a bad Caro Kann for White. So they have to take. They have to take to gain any kind of, to attempt to gain any kind of advantage. Azerbaijan takes with the queen. Now Knight F3 or D4, and here you have every possible move. Knight C6, Knight F6, G6, E6, C takes D, even Bishop F5. I think I've exhausted pretty much most of the possibilities there. So we played G6. Mr. Coffee, what's up, man? Good to see you. I had the feeling you don't do Wednesdays. Yesterday we had our Wednesday tournament stream, which is normally on Tuesdays, and Mr. Coffee was not in attendance. Wednesday's a tough day at the office for him. He rarely misses a stream. Alright, so G6 You had to travel for work. To work for travel. Speaking of slow moves, g6 is a little slow. Knight f6, knight c6, those are the main moves. But g6 I played a lot myself. It's okay, it's fine. Now here we have to be careful. I came to learn that there's a right and a wrong way to play this position. The wrong way to play the position is knight f6, and the right way to play it is bishop g7. Master does the right way. And it's a very subtle reason why bishop g7 is better than knight f6. The idea is, after knight f6, white has queen b3. And this isn't known by a lot of people, but I've studied the opening pretty deeply, and this is a serious issue. Now you got a really big problem. The endgame is better for white, and if you try to do pawn takes pawn, bishop c4 is very scary. So basically, bishop g7 is better, because if queen b3, you can trade queens and then play pawn takes pawn. And the Spindler-like point is bishop takes d4. Give up the bishop. That was weird. I saw Gawain Jones. Adams Gawain Jones. Oh no. Wait. So Gawain had to learn the hard way? Oh no. Mr. Slow. Mr. Worcester Semmel. Poor Gawain Jones had to learn the hard way not to do this. Alright. But anyway, we're going back now to bishop g7, and white plays knight a3. So white has a couple different moves here. Bishop e3, knight a3, bishop e2, and even knight on bd2 might not be bad. You know, this is kind of new. I noticed this, I guess, the last time I was preparing to play c3 Sicilian. With knight on bd2, white oftentimes has tricks based on bishop c4. So cd4, bishop c4 is the idea. Notice how new all the games here are. Hey, there's a Kudrin game, 2008. Interesting. Okay, but he was black. So bishop g7, knight a3. Now what we do is we just ignore it. You know, you just ignore it. I like knight f6. This is probably stronger than c takes d. Now bishop c4, queen e4 check. I have played this position before. I analyzed it years and years ago. It's not new. See there, Joel Benjamin versus Dmitry from 96. This is a game from 98. Sveshnikov, Sabalo. This is not new. Knight d2 is new. Knight a3 is pretty well known. Knight a3 here. Now here, this is commonly played and, in my opinion, not dangerous. So, Ali Furhat lost against Levente, but Levente kind of gave up playing the c3 Sicilian, although he beat me a few times. Wonder why I never played the g6 system against Levente. It's weird. There must have been some reason. So now, Astrobate, you're supposed to play knight a6, guarding against threat of knight c7, but you didn't. You played check voluntarily. This I've never seen anyone do before, and it's not really a problem for white. I would assume they can just play bishop e2. And ultimately, you're just kind of encouraging white to develop their pieces. So this doesn't really help you in any way. Knight a6 is a face hugger on b5. But my experience is that this variation is pretty okay for black. As far as face hugger knights on b5 go, this is about as good as you get. Black should be just about equal. After knight a6. This is a new move. I don't see the point. Bishop e2. So now you're like, you just played queen e4 check without any reason. And I think this is going to be a problem in variations where like the rook is coming to e1, for example. Our biggest issue is that we might lose more time with the queen. So that's what's going to happen here. Castles, castles, and now white makes a stupid move. Bishop d3. This bishop doesn't do anything on d3. You look at it, it's like attacking g6. So he just attacked your queen, but the move itself, it doesn't improve his position really much. Maybe very, very tiny bit. Opening up, for example, okay, the e2 square. It's not a terrible move by white, but it would be more constructive to play rook e1. When this becomes like a real, I would say a real threat, to bring another piece into the game. Bishop d3 is a bad move. It's like the first move we can think of. Now, you have to decide where you want to go, because you have three. E6 looks weird. I mean, we're either going to d5, I guess c6, or g4. c6 is the farthest away, but after knight e5, where are you going? You could go back to d5. Then we have to ask ourselves, why did we put our queen in e4? And then queen g4 is interesting. Queen g4, of course, we don't mind a trade of queens. And h3, we can go to h5. And I think that there's even a small chance there might be like a real sacrifice on h3 later. I guess I would probably play queen g4 reluctantly here. Queen d5 has a threat. Aha! Mr. Cheapo. Masturbate likes that. He didn't see that. He didn't see that little trick. I'm sure he would have played for it. So he went back all the way to c6. And then boom, shakalaka boom, another tempo. And now only choice is here or here. God, I love ambulances. I love ambulances t-shirt. You don't know how annoying it is to live close to hospitals, and they're just constantly doing this crap. So Masturbate, I gotta say, I think that b6 looks more logical. Maybe you just didn't realize you had the square available. Here you're clogging up your back rank. On b6, clearly you can be attacked. You could be attacked by a4, a5, but you got back here. Back to where you came from. Okay, I mean, e8's not terrible, and you can also go back to d8. It's not terrible. My instinct is b6. If bishop e3, here's what I was going to say, guys. Maybe, I don't know if it's a good move, but we ought to consider this. I don't know how good this is, objectively, but where do you put your bishop after knight d5? Because on g5, there is this f6 type of stuff. Now, maybe white has some sort of crazy sacrifice, but, you know, you get my point. Here, maybe queen d8. Bishop's going to have to go somewhere. Admittedly, the black structure looks kind of weird. Alright, anyway. It's fine, Masturbate. Queen e8 looks fine. D takes c5. and now this problem. So actually, this looks like it was better. On d takes c, you can take with a knight, or even take with a queen. You take with the queen, your queen is not trapped. You take with a knight, he can pin you. That's definitely not pleasant. But you can hit that guy again with knight d5. Tic-tac-toe. For example, knight takes c5, bishop e3, knight d5. If bishop d4, you could play bishop takes e5, bishop takes e5, knight takes here. Maybe it's not so bad. Alright, queen e8, d takes c5, and now we got a problem. So this is a crazy solution by Asterbate now. Bishop g4. Now if you take, you get forked with knight c7. So you do a decoy. White takes. Okay, I'm confused. Oh no. Has this been checked with the engine? Oh no. That loses a piece. Asterbate. You didn't put this game through the engine? What were you thinking, bro? This drops a piece. Knight g4. I don't know, man. I had the weird hallucination that it worked for a second, too. Like, what does it do? It's like you're trying to decoy his bishop. Are you trying to pin him with rook d8? You got nothing here. Oh, no. This just drops a piece. White doesn't take it. Then you go back. And now white just makes like the most random move ever. c6. You're like, okay. Takes. And now knight to d4. Knight to c5. Knight takes c6. B takes c6. And then bishop c4. Well, this guy's pretty solid. You know, it's just that he doesn't see when pieces are hanging. Typical c3 Sicilian player, right? Knight d5. Hitting his knight. Fixing your pawn structure. What do we do now? You take on e5. Because if you take here, he takes to the queen, attacking your knight on c5. You have to take back this way. He stays with a better structure, bishop c4. See, very positional player with white. He's got the two bishops, he's got a better pawn structure, but he slightly weakened his king position with the move f3. Now you voluntarily pulled your knight off of c5. Very surprised by that. You like this diagonal, don't you? Is anybody else here surprised to see Asterbate pulling his knight off of c5 voluntarily? Not a typical move from my perspective, from an aggressive type player. Your knight's not even attacked, and you're pulling it off of c5. I expected you to play rook d8. I mean, that may not be a particularly good move, but that's what I would expect, something more aggressive. Also, I think your queen is oddly placed on e8. Here's another Asterbate move, like there, but you're trying to save that, right? You're trying to save that for later. Maybe bishop c7. You can lose the exchange with bishop h6. That's going to be a problem. Alright, so this is interesting. Knight back to d7. Wonder what he's thinking. Is he going to go here? Is he going to go there? Bishop h6, bishop g7. And now white doesn't exchange bishops, which I think he's justified. Maybe e3 would be a better square. Bishop f4, knight e5, and then the tragic bishop takes e5. Why would anybody play that? That's the worst move ever. He gives up his dark square bishop. The guy has concrete weaknesses on the dark squares, and he's just like trading off his dark square bishop for no reason for the knight on e5. He's better here. Bishop e3, white is slightly better. Even, I don't know, give you the light square bishop maybe. I guess you're still equal. Yeah, he really shouldn't be giving you any bishops, so I guess he has to play bishop. Or bishop e2, obviously. Maybe bishop e2. But I also think his bishop would be better on e3, where it looks both ways, and it's not apt to get attacked. So this is a huge mistake. Bishop e5, rook e1. Oh, no. So here you could probably claim a draw. Very tempting to sacrifice the bishop on g3. You can take twice, check. He has to play king f1 for a win. Looks like his king is really exposed there. I don't think he can avoid a perpetual check. So this is a draw. You play bishop takes g3. If you want to win, you're going to have to play something else. I don't like queen b6 particularly. Are you ever going to move your rooks? Rook d8 or something? Why didn't you do this right away? Alright, here. b3, a very bad idea. Weakening the dark squares. He should probably try to defend without moving his pawn. Like queen e2, for example. Or even rook b1 for that matter. Or maybe like bishop b3. I mean, anything but b3. Pretty much anything with this move. Weakening his c3 pawn. Weakening the dark squares. What's up, guys? Where is everybody? Where is everybody? We've got games from Asterbait, Mr. Slow, Yefim Geller, Schumacher, Move 11, Nefidov, among others. So b3, very bad move. Rook a d8. Okay. Asterbait finally got his cheapo on. The guy plays queen e2, and now a5. a5 is a time waster. We are here. There's Dragonfly. Butterfly Hunter. Nice to see you. So a5. Okay. It's just a move. Boy, your rooks are really not happy here. I have a suggestion. Maybe we move the king up, and we go for his king with like h5. I kind of like this. Since we're safe on the dark squares anyway, you can play for h5 and rook h8, and well, that's not what I intended. This. You can submit a game if you still need one. $14 moves. I might need a 14 mover. So Asterbait, okay, a5 is just a routine move. White plays a4, queen c5. You're not threatening anything. Rook a d1. Does anybody know what Asterbait's problem is? Pawn play. So you're trying to do everything with your pieces, but you can't. You can. You need to use your pawns too. So h5, h4 with the idea of king g7 and maybe rook h8 behind it. This guy's unbelievable. And he just lets g3 go. Position is practically equal. I think it's really equal. He wanted to attack your pawn on c6, but I mean, dude, this is pretty obvious. I mean, how can white miss that? What does he think you're doing with the queen on h5? Does it come over there for a friendly visit? the Dmitry Medvedev delegation threatening World War III, and the guy doesn't even see it, man. He doesn't even see it. He plays Queen E4. Bishop takes E3. Oops. That's a problem. Now, how are we going to protect H2? We go back. And the guy hangs a rook instead with rook E2, rook takes E1 check. Drugs are everywhere. All right. That was a silly way to lose a game for white. I mean, it was pretty much close to equal, and he just dropped everything in a series of 4 moves. A real masterpiece. But anyway, Asterbait, interesting opening. The move order E4, C5, C3. You played D5 right away, yeah. You know, the other way you can play, of course, and I know you have, is doing G6 as well. And oftentimes, you know, we'll get a different line with the D4, C takes D. But if they play knight f3, then we'll play D5 anyway. We get to the same position. That was interesting. Shock you with the game. All right, no spoilers. Is that the 65 move game? I don't want to see. I want it to be a surprise when I go over this game. GM Ilya 1500. All right. Classic GM rating. Ilya. Ilya. All right, so now we're on to a serious business. If Mr. Slow is ready, we're going to do the Geller and Toshin game. Now, this may be a game I've already seen, but I'm not sure. I've played through a bunch of Geller's games in the past. I don't know them by heart, but I'll recognize it if it's a game that I've gone over before, most likely. It looks like it's another Spanish, so it appears Mr. Slow is sharpening his Spanish with white or something. Geller versus Antoshin. E4, E5. Guys, don't forget. Donate subs. We need more subscribers. They're all gone. All the subscribers are gone. And with no subscribers to the stream, we've got no viewers. So subscribe or donate. I love De Bruy. Well, it used to be better before everybody played the freaking Marshall. You know, now everyone plays the Marshall or the... There are 2 reasons why people stop playing the Spanish with white. It's the Marshall and the Berlin defense. 2 very annoying things, you know, have caused the Roy to go down in popularity with white and the Italian game to go up. First 4 chapters are Ruy Lopez. Okay. So E4, E5. Antoshin was a well-known master. Was he a GM? I don't know. You know, he may have just been an IM. I'm not sure. But he was the kind of player who was one of those household Soviet-era grandmasters. Or, you know, Soviet-era players that you see games. You see games with all these famous players. He might have been a GM. I'm not sure. But Antoshin not really famous in his own right. One of those people that all the strongest players kind of, you know, he was a punching bag for the top players. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6. No, I'm sure Antoshin was a respectable player. I don't know much about him. Castles, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop e3, d6. So, one thing I've always kind of wondered is, like, why d6 rather than castles? Now, today's a different game because a lot more people play... Today, a lot more people play the Marshall. But one thing I never quite understood, I guess, is like, what's the advantage in playing d6 versus castling for black? It's not like you're not going to castle. Now today, where everyone's playing the anti-martial, you may want to play d6 just to stop people from playing the anti-martial or something. Just be like, I'm not going to play the martial. You don't have to play an anti-martial. Whereas in those days, say, I don't really understand any particular reason for playing. I may just be ignorant, but I don't see any reason not to castle, basically. Today, it's a different ballgame. I would think like less information is better. If the opponent doesn't know if you're going to play the martial or not, well, that's better. You don't want to know. You want them to know less, not more. By castling, you keep your intentions hidden. So when you castle, you can play the martial or the normal closed Roy Lopez. So you're giving white less information. My question is like, what's the advantage in playing d6 right away? Giving the opponent more information? The number one advantage of d6 is that it gives the opponent more information. Is there some move order that's like different? I mean, that can make a difference? What independent possibilities does white have against the castles? There's a4. Geller uttered the same notion as yours in his book. Right. Interesting. It doesn't make a big difference. I don't know. He uttered. His utters. I thought you wrote Kode. I'm trying to confirm the pronunciation of Kode, but that's Gelle. Gelle. We have a player on my team, on my former team, called Gelle, by the way. And Gellert, as Nafidov can attest, is a very famous Hungarian name. So there's Gellert, Gelle. Anyway, black commits to d6, white plays c3. Black castles, white plays h3. So we have a main line, Chigorin variation with knight a5, bishop c2. And, I mean, so the interesting thing is, like, this was very fashionable at that time. This game was played in 1970. Fairly late. This is a late Geller game. Wow, I didn't realize it was so late. It's in red, too. What does it mean if it's in red? Damn, the date is in red. That's serious. That's very frightening. What means this red? This is communist game, yes? This means was played in Soviet Union. East Berlin. 1970. Not complete. You have not completed the form. Sorry, will not accept this. It's not complete. You must write it in letters, not numbers. So what I want to say was, like, the Chigorin variation was very popular forever, like, right? From, well, let's say 1930 to 1980. But it looks like around the early 80s, it stopped being played. Not completely, ever, but when did Karpov ever play the Chigorin variation? You know, with black. Players like Kiriz and many others, of course, played Chigorin variation in the 50s, 60s. This is 1970. Then it went out of fashion. Zaitsev took over, right. So Karpov's trainer, Zaitsev, popularized the Zaitsev variation. There's also the Breyer variation, which also became more popular. I think both the Breyer variation and when I was learning chess in the 80s, Chigorin was probably the third most common line. After both the the Zaitsev variation and the Breyer variation. But there is a massive amount of theory. What was I going to say? I forgot what I wanted to say. There was this player. He was pretty good. Who was the big expert on the Spanish? Oh, you know the Schockverlag series of books? Who was it that did not Geller, who did the book for the Spanish? Who's the big Spanish expert? Like, Swayton, right? Probably Alexei Swayton. But I feel like I'm thinking of someone else. Another Soviet era grandmaster. I guess Swayton. Dragonfly Hunter. He's such a noob. Typical American. Self-taught American player. Victor Mikhайловsky. We're talking Soviet era. Victor Mikhайловsky. Mikhайловsky is like my generation. So, yeah, I was thinking Swayton, I guess. But I keep feeling like I'm forgetting someone. Alright. Anyway, back to the subject. So d4. Now black plays c takes d. Not to mention Hungarian players. Of the Hungarian grandmasters, my old friend Pintar József was the biggest modern expert, but, you know, before him probably God knows. C takes d4, c takes d4. This is a c file, usually. But I think the classical way to play for black here is queen c7. Why not keep the tension? Maybe black doesn't like a really closed game with d5. That would be the number one reason for black to not play queen c7. The problem is this bishop is good here, you know. It's not like black did something stupid like put his bishop on b7 where it's like deadened by the pawn on d5. I think that black's best bet is to keep the tension. You know, as I pointed out last stream, there's knight d7. That's like strong point style too. So anyway, I mean, you know, the e5 pawn is under attack. So queen c7 defends e5. There's not a lot of ways to defend e5. Queen c7 or knight d7, or else you trade off your center. Oh yeah, only release tension. Is that a blog? I heard there was a really great blog. No, I think it was a blog that was advertising some of these books. It was a blog advertising a famous trainer. The legendary trainer, Jakob Agard. I think he's some sort of legendary. He's like a legendary trainer. He's on the level with, I don't know, Kramnik. So anyway, and Jesse Cry. No, I like Jesse. C takes d4, c takes d4. It's fine. It's a variation. Now bishop b7. Now the problem with this move is like what I just said. You're really asking for it. You're asking for d5. It's like Azerbaijan playing the black side of the Queen's Indian. It's nice to put pressure on the center, but your bishop has more flexibility on c8. That bishop could go either way. I like it on d7 better than on b7. But of course, this particular position, I'm not sure what's defending the pawn on e5. Apariyeshi Hardachai. What's defending the pawn on e5 there? I don't even understand how that's even a move. But black can take. Now it turns out in this position bishop e7 is the main move. So it looks like it's clearly better to play queen c7. What other moves are possible? Knight d7, queen c7. Then there's the old-fashioned knight c6. Okay, so cd4, cd4, bishop b7, and now white should play d5 probably, but that's not it's not in everyone's style to play d5. It's probably the best move. It kills the bishop. The bishop will probably have to go back to c8 later, or else you're going to find a way to sacrifice a piece on the pawn chain or play f5 somehow. It's not easy. Look at black's score here. It's horrible. But if you don't like the closed structure, I guess you could put your knight on c3. You know, another objection to this exchange of pawns would be the possibility that white can use the c3 square for that knight in some cases. It looks like it's only been played in a handful of games here. In this particular example, this has been played by some good players, including Anand, who lost in 1989. Are you going to get attacked by b4 at some point, or this was played by Ilya Smirin, by Ivanchuk, by Anand? But at the end of the day, I guess this is a more common. This is like a more common square for the knight to go to. You don't have to worry about the knight getting attacked by b4. The knight will typically go to f1. It secures e4. It could go to b3. At another point, this is important now. This is very important, actually. That we can play b3. And I've probably seen this game, but it's been a while. We can play b3 and put our bishop on b2, where the bishop defends the d4 pawn and just has kind of like a good diagonal there. So now black plays knight c6. It looks like the main move is takes. I mean, white doesn't have to take back right away. You see there's one game with knight f1. b3 has been played. But then again, like, it's kind of like, well, why not recapture? So the e5 pawn, is it hanging? Apparently not, because rook c8 is played in a lot of games here. You know who played like this with black? Also, Nesbedinov. I always thought it was odd. Nesbedinov's sort of famous as an attacking player, but he played a lot of very closed systems. The black side of the Roy Lopez. Curious as well. So rook c8 is possible. It has a bad score. Black plays knight c6. This move makes sense. You're defending the e5 pawn. You've got b4. If the knight goes to b4, white plays d5. Knight goes to b4. Black can save the knight by going like a5, knight back to a6 in some cases. So that's what happens here. The only square. Less than ideal. My first idea here is a a4, undermining the white squares. This looks to me like a King's Indian. Strange that no one played a4. It would leave the knight. It would leave the knight too secure on b4, I guess. I guess I'm used to playing around knights on b4 on the white side of the King's Indian. I'm not really fazed by that knight on b4. It doesn't really do anything. I mean, if you pile up here, yeah, okay, it could go to c2. Even this move is probably not that bad. If you go a3, you force him back where he intends to go anyway. What white really needs is b4. You know, to kill that knight forever. What we really need is to have his knight on b7. That's our classic. Rook c8 after double take on e5, you have queen c7. So, going back a minute. I was asking how the pawn's defended. I wasn't sure if maybe there isn't some sort of back rank thing, you know, honestly. Like double take, if I take this. Mr. Slow points out that there's simply queen c7. That's tidy and straightforward. Yeah, so that's good. So rook c8 has a way of defending. I like rook c8 better than this move. Now white plays d5, knight b4. Now you have to play this very artificial a5 with black in order to not lose a piece. And Geller here could have kicked him back, but he keeps his options open. Yeah. Why you don't have to kick it right away. So he plays knight f1. And what's really disturbing about this position is that, look at the database. Stelvagen versus Sokolov. Okay, so Ivan Sokolov, living in the Netherlands, huge expert on the black side of the, well, all openings, but especially this. Speaking of good trainers, I would recommend him. So, black won 2 out of 2, but they were weaker players playing white. White is better here, man. White has to be better here. White has a significant advantage in this position. Can you imagine white would lose 2 out of 2? White lost 2 out of 3. Lifetime in this position. Okay, it's a fixed pawn structure, and I mean there's no pawn dynamics really. So like winning chances are somewhat limited. But imagine white losing. I mean, it's not that easy to lose with this kind of space advantage if you're a competent player. Stelvagen was young in 2004, and he lost to an experienced grandmaster. The other guy was just 2200. But I would take white any day. White has a serious space advantage here. So knight f1, queen c7. Someone played knight a6, and someone played queen d7. Queen d7. Played by Nisty. I would think like that's a major idea, like in a Najdorf. To go bishop d8, bishop b6. I always like to try to play queen d7 in the Spanish. It just never seems to work. It also takes away the d7 square from the knight. After this move, interestingly, someone actually played queen e2 here. That's kind of an odd move. Grigorians. The young Grigorians. He's living here now. He's married to a Hungarian chess player. I played him years ago. Hungarian team championship. Sergei Grigorians. I haven't heard much about him in another year or two. Mr. Chess Trauma. Mr. Chess Trauma has donated 2222, bringing us up to 77777. Nice. You can't do it by yourself. Mr. Chess Trauma can't do it by himself. So we're going to need some gift subs from you guys. We're going to need some gift subs. Bring it on. Your paycheck's coming on Monday. Don't forget. Take a payday loan and send Saji some gift subs. Get a hype train going. Thank you, Mr. Slow, for the donation to the tournament fund for August. Yeah, I don't know. Knight f1, the only thing about Knight f1 is that, well, we have to get our pieces out, you know. Knight f1 is definitely a good move. Okay, so queen c7. And now this one random game. There's a player here who played bishop d2, which is a reasonable move. But I think Geller's move is way more natural. What's going to happen when black piles up? Usually rook fc8. See, the problem with rook c8 is that it takes away your bishop's only square. You know, I'd much rather have the black bishop on d7. Your black bishop's on d7, then you're not messing anything up with like rook c8. Plus the bishop on d7 controls f5. Now what's black going to do about like knight f5 coming in? You're going to have to play g6 and weaken your king side, which is what happened. So black has to do this. White plays a3, knight a6. Now this knight is recycling back here, back here. I would think that Geller wants to develop. Bishop e3. Bishop h6 is just one of those moves that people play. I don't think that it's a great idea to play bishop h6. It's tempting. Oh, sorry guys. This is very tempting because it feels aggressive to do that, but it doesn't do anything, and ultimately even like black playing bishop f8 and trading his bishop might be favorable. You could play bishop h6, but you're probably forcing black to make a good move. Or maybe rook e8. Maybe he should play rook e8 so that this bishop can still come back to c8. I was thinking that Geller would play bishop e3. To me, this is a King's Indian. You can call it what you want, but there's a lot of similarity between the black side of, you know, the Roy Lopez and the King's Indian. Mr. Slow would appreciate. It looks like some kind of King's Indian. I mean, we have this fixed structure in the center. The C file is really... It's practically favorable to white at this point. I like the bishop hitting c5. This knight can come back to d2 in some cases without blocking a bishop at c1. But he plays this instead, which is more forcing. A more concrete move. We're just attacking b5. Black has no way to protect the pawn. Okay, maybe he has one way to protect the pawn. He could play queen d7. Queen b6 is bad. So queen d7 is the only move that protects the pawn. It would also allow for that knight to come back to c7, but it looks very artificial. And so Nisty was right in that case. If queen d7 is the best move, then Nisty was definitely right about putting the queen there in the first place, because at least there you could go bishop d8 at some point later. So plays this now. There goes the light squares. But what do we expect black to play, right? So this square is very weak. Black's intending to try to put his knight on c5 probably. I just want to caution everybody to watch out for, you know, possible sacrifices in this opening. Many a knight has been sacrificed on like d5 or something. So anyway, Geller was a really strong player. This is I would say a very positional game by him. Now bishop e3. Keeping the tension. And what's going to happen if knight c5 now? Do you think he's going to bring his bishop back to f1? But he can't. He can't. Because the e4 pawn is hanging. So on knight c5, this isn't possible. So after bishop e3, he's prepared not to go like here. That would be awkward. We didn't put our bishop on d3 so we could bring it back to c2, right? You could do it, but it's not optimal. This is very interesting. I don't think I know this game. You know, I don't think I've seen this game before. Weird, because I think I have studied that book, but I tend to go through books kind of skipping around, not from page 1 to the end. I've definitely studied the Geller book, although I don't know if the edition that you have might be different from mine. Rook c1 now. There are tactics. But I don't know. Can we say that white is threatening something? Anything concrete? It doesn't look like white actually has a concrete threat. Just so much better spatially. Just kind of hard for black to do anything here. I mean, it's possible that bishop takes c5 is like a positional threat, but I know from experience with Mr. Slow that if I was to trade off my dark square bishop against him in a King's Indian or something, I'd have to be very careful about the dark squares later on. If I was to play bishop takes c5, I'm going to have to watch out that that dark square bishop on e7 doesn't become some sort of monster piece later on, getting in on the dark squares. So black played this anyway, reinforcing this, the wonderful redundant knights, and then bishop b5. Threatening to win a pawn now, for real. Bishop c5. Or bishop d7 followed by bishop c5 and knight takes e5. So that, now it looks like an old Indian. Could black ever play f5? What about bishop c6? Is this going to be a problem at some point? So I'm pretty concerned about that if I'm black here. That's like a Benoni thing, you know, masturbate. Benoni, Queen's Indian, Blumenfeld, getting that bishop on c6 there. Maybe white isn't that well poised to take advantage of it. But this pawn is kind of scary. So bishop there is a possibility. White instead plays knight d2, which I mentioned earlier. This is why I like bishop e3. Again, we see the King's Indian motif. Bishop goes to e3 so that we can play knight f3 d2. We're reinforcing the e4 pawn here. We're not like bishop on c1. If our bishop was on c1, it would be blocked. Plus, you have this crushing Benoni theme with knight c4. It's a King's Indian. It's a Benoni. It's a Roy Lopez. The only thing that one has to watch out for is f5. But that's just not even an option. I mean, at this point. That would be like nuking yourself. Imagine if black tried to play f5. Okay, I mean, it's okay. It's possible, right? Takes, or takes, bishop takes d5. But what's the deal? When you look at the position in terms of color complex, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to look at the chessboard from the perspective of color complex black and white. The problem with f5 is that we nuke our whole light square complex. So like this square is in danger from the queen. The c4 square is whites. This is whites. This is bad. This is sketch. This is sketchy. So okay. This I really don't like for black. Possibilities along those lines, like knight c4. That alone looks maybe game over, you know, pretty close to game over. So I don't think that f5 is even a possibility. But this is ugly. Like you have no space, and now you're playing rook d8. That means no f5. Even less f5. Now with less f5. Queen e2. Squeezing. He's squeezing the white squares now. Hey, why don't you play f5, buddy? By the way, if f5, pawn takes f5, pawn takes f5, knight takes f5, rook takes f5, queen g4 check. Bye-bye. So f5 was not an option, but black's totally reduced to like making ridiculous moves. I mean, rook d8, queen e2, and now king g7. What's the best thing about king g7? It's not a light square. Well, he went to g7 because h8 was bad, or what? Like, seriously. I guess we're just defending. We're just, like, defending. I don't know what king g7 even does. It feels like a waiting move. Waiting to die. Black has no space. Watch this. Rook c2. I love this move. Black is like paralyzed. He has no plan. I have a suggestion of a plan, seriously, for black. I do. I have a suggestion. With king g7, maybe he has an idea. It's pretty abstract, but it's possible to play h6. What do you think, Mr. Slow? Not without risk. And who knows? I mean, Schumacher would unplug the f4 here, but I think that's kind of anti-positional. Black's idea would be to play bishop g5. See, at least there he would trade off his bad bishop. The problem is that his good bishop is bad, and his bad bishop is bad too. So he doesn't know which is his bad bishop anymore. Poor guy, like... You look at this position, you think, well, it's just a clusterfuck. It's not. White has a huge space advantage because of these two pawns here, plus he has better coordination. So White's advantage is actually quite large. But look what happened. He goes here. Do you know how bad this move is from a like strategic standpoint for Black? He's literally trading his own good bishop for White's bad bishop. That's how desperate this guy is. You know you're in trouble when you're trading your own good bishop because it sucks so bad on b7. Kind of wonder, like, this is like absurd, practically absurd to say this, but it almost feels like bishop c8 might be a better move than bishop a6. I don't know, man. Jeez. At least h6 bishop g5 is a plan. No, seriously. White doesn't seem to have, like, an immediate threat. He's just, like, quietly doubling on the c-file. If you play h6, yeah, you've got to watch. You've got to watch possible sacrifices. There's the Schumacher attacking the front, the head of the pawn chain type of thing. But, I mean, that's a very dangerous policy for White. If you do that, all hell's going to break loose. f4 is not always a good idea. And Black here has pretty good control of e5. So I wouldn't recommend f4. After h6, it's not so easy to see exactly what White would do. to counter this plan of like bishop g5. He can allow that exchange. Of course, it's not the end of the world. Anyway, bishop a6 seems like a positional mistake. Takes, knight takes, and now rook c6. Oof. My head hurts here. You still got redundant knights, but in a different way now. God. Black just can't do anything. Beautiful. Bad bishop, good bishop. The king on g7 is nice because it can get like forked by the knight or something. Now we play queen g4 with like a very transparent threat of knight f5. I would expect black to play king h8. You kind of wonder like why didn't he put his king on h8 in the first place? Like, seriously. Going back to move 24, he plays king g7. As I said, the only thing I can come up with is h6. If you're not going to play h6, then why not put your king on like h8 in the first place? You know what I mean? At least there you could do like maybe bishop f8. I just don't really get the point of king g7. But I think I'm right. Now bishop h6. And now, well, bishop f8. There's this pawn. I mean, this makes some sense, right? But are we going to be able to get in there? Like, concretely? A little worried about the... I'm a little worried about the d3. I'm a little worried about that. Here. Guarding d3, attacking f6. I want to see what the engine says. Shit. Bishop f8 is the best move. Everything I say is right, you know, but it's like it's still hard to finish black off, even as big as white's advantage feels, you know. But rook g8 looks, it's a cheapo almost. And it's like, does he have some trick with f5? I mean, I don't know. Rook g8. Yeah, he ends up playing f5 later. I don't think I went over this game before. Knight c4, queen d8. This is that's a really beautiful move. Maybe I know that move. That move feels familiar. If I did go over this game, I only ever went over it briefly, and I didn't pay like close attention. Rook e3 has familiarity though. I feel like I've seen that before. It's not the first time this idea has ever been used. But there is definitely a deja vu going on for me now with Rook e3. And black's bishop is buried. So he's going to try to trade it off. Now f4. And this is very controversial, as I said before. But it's better now because this square isn't as well protected by the knight. There's no knight coming to e5. So if you take, white takes with the bishop, black's getting crushed on d6. This is like horrifying, man. He just kills him. Take, take, take. And then this just dies. Black's center just dies. It's crushing. Look at the white pieces. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. How did this happen? And what game was black playing, you know? It really went south, you know, rather quickly here. After rook g8. This is just total desperation. He wants to try to get the d5 pawn, I guess. And that's what happened. almost all of white's pieces are protected. And so there's mate. There's bishop d6, queen f6. Now the best line is queen g8, knight f7. This is a cute move. Back into attacking the rook on a8 that never moved. It finally moved, thank God. I wouldn't want it to have gone the whole game without moving. Knight f7 check, king g8, and now what's the finishing blow? Knight d8. So how's this diagonal? He plays knight d8, there's a mate on f8. And now the question is, can the queen stay on this diagonal? White king has a cubbyhole on h2. If your king leaves the diagonal, you're getting like queen f7. And the queen can only stay on the diagonal on c4 or a2. So on c4, white just simply has like b3, winning. And on a2, I think white still does b3. And then my idea was queen a1 check. And I don't know, maybe rook d1. Queen takes e5. Maybe black has a tactic there. On queen a1 check, rook d1, rook takes g3. Maybe we do have to go here. And then queen takes e5, queen f7 check, king h8, queen e8 check, rook g8, and knight f7 mate. So I think that's going to cut it. Alright, good game, man. I don't remember if I've gone over this one, you know. It's almost completely positional win by Geller, I would call it. Okay, next game is Schumacher. Just a second. Be right back with you guys. Don't forget the hype train. Where's everybody tonight? You guys don't love me anymore. Nobody loves me anymore. Come on. Thursday night analysis stream. I've got games from Schumacher. Move 11. Power of the Noob, who's not a subscriber. Nefedov and Shaki. Alright, next to Schumacher. We're black. This is a game from the tournament on Wednesday, last night. Now, I have a question. Do you guys remember Schumacher playing the Benoni? Do you guys remember that? Does he play the Benoni? I remember playing the Benoni against Schumacher. Does he play the Benoni? What does he normally play against d4? Queen's Gambit declined, right? Schumacher always plays the Queen's Gambit declined. So this is new. I mean, I don't remember him playing the Benoni. I remember playing the Benoni against him like multiple times. So ironically, he plays Benoni and his opponent plays the system he plays. Knight c3, g6, e4, bishop g7. Okay, this isn't a Benoni. This is, I guess it's still a Benoni, but I mean it's not a modern Benoni yet because black hasn't played e6 yet. It's not a modern Benoni until we play e6 and trade on d5, and white takes back with the c pawn. So it's more like a Roman Forum, modern defense style Benoni. White plays h3, black castles, white plays knight f3, and now black plays e6. And Jinji, for example, years and years, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, was selling these VHS tapes where he was always recommending people play this crap. He would play this crap like, keeping the tension, knight a6, rook e8. And, yeah, I guess it's okay. I never thought it was necessarily as good as the regular Benoni. But we transpose after bishop d3. The only question is, what about e takes d5, then rook e8 check? Well, black has given up. No, I mean, e takes d5, cd5 is main line. It's main line modern Benoni. Sorry for the what? Sorry for the tilt game. I heard you put a hurt on Acerbate, Mr. Slow. He said you beat him with like 100% accuracy or something. No mercy. But in any case, yeah, again, years ago, this was Roman's favorite. Rook e8. But by playing e takes d right away, it's a lot like an Auerbach King's Indian, but I mean, after e takes d, rook e8 check, what's white do? Haven't I had this position against, like, do you remember the team that used to play me in the simul's? Why they take with the c-pawn, not with e-pawn? Well, this is exactly the thing that I'm talking about now. So if white takes with the e-pawn, see, white takes with the e-pawn has a good score. But I'm a little bit surprised just because of one thing. Somebody's going to need to explain to me what happens on that exchange sack. It's like the Auerbach King's Indian. So check, bishop e3. Aha! This is a very interesting move. Wow, king f1. That's high level. I like that. Schumacher doesn't know b5. No, he knows it, but he usually is playing white. I wouldn't assume that he doesn't know it. But this I didn't know about. You got to admit, though, it's kind of artificial for white. I'm not sure this is a big deal. I just want to comment on the statistics. Statistics look not great for black. And the move's been played by some very good players. John Spielman back in '99. Looks like, a famous computer played it in 1997. First played by Nenad Shulava in 1990, where he lost to Pavlovich. Well, the computer played it twice with white. Anyway, Suba 2005. So it's been played by a bunch of good players and computers. But anyway, the point would be bishop e3, sack the exchange. Do I have any games here? Oh, we've talked about this before. You see, Marazevich has played it a whole bunch of times. They're like lining up. It looks like a poker game where there's a really bad player. And there's like 6 people on the waiting list to get on the table. Gelfand, Wojtasek, Postny. This is a good draw variation for black. But winning, in my experience, is pretty much not really an option. It's good for a draw, probably. I've overpressed, though. See, I have a bunch of games here. Most recently, September last year. So what you're talking about is like C takes D. But the thing is, like, if you want to win, dude, look, Schumacher, Sparkle Horse, Schumacher, Sparkle Horse, Schumacher, Sparkle Horse. So he has a billion games here with white, Mr. Slow, against me. But you know, maybe B5 isn't Black's best winning try. Everyone seems to play other stuff. Look at the winning statistic chances. Black's highest winning percentage is with Knight H5, it turns out. Second highest winning percentage is with A6. And then Rook E8. Jabava. Anyway. Alright, so he plays Knight of BD7. Never been a fan of this, but it's going to be the same thing with like Knight H5. Black plays for dark squares. Normally Knight H5. I have never recalled, I don't play this move, but as I said earlier, I don't recall Schumacher playing the black side of the Benoni, but maybe he picked it up from watching someone else, most likely. Not necessarily me, because I don't play the Benoni that much, but look, the number one game here is Nakamura. Gashimov himself. But 98, yeah. Munoz, Panto. Laszlo Bartzai, 1992. Okay, so 98 is just not a typical idea. It defends it is passive, you know, and this is a passive square for the knight. That's why Knight H5 is better. I have a lot of games like there with white. Bishop F6. I had a game in the Boylston Chess Club Championship in like 1998, 99 against Charles Riordan, I remember, where he played Bishop F6 against me. I had a game in with Parkanya Attila with white, and I think the same line as well. I don't remember what I played, but this is like the normal continuation, I thought. Let's see what I've played with white. Oh, only one game. That's weird. That's actually really surprising. I've only faced Knight H5 once in this position. Acerbate. Oh no. Acerbate, oh no. You have 4 games here. Acerbate's like the world leading expert. You have 4 games here. So I have 7.5 out of 8. Rook E8. That's a normal move. This is new to me. Alright. Masters database. Bishop F4. There's something weird about Bishop F4. Queen E7, securing E5. And now white played Rook E1. But see, the problem with Rook E1 is, like, what does Rook E1 do? Black's playing for dark square control. Rook E1 hits me like it's just a routine move that has no concrete purpose. It even loosens the dark squares. Unless you're planning on like a sort of pawn sacrifice with e5, I want to play moves that will help me control the dark squares with white. So, I mean, queen d2 is the obvious. I would play queen d2. And then on knight e5, it's ironic here that there's a game between Iveta and Monica Sacco, because Iveta always played the Benoni a lot with black. Bishop e2, I would think. But again, this 98 line isn't really great. So rook e1 is not so great. Knight e5. And then I think that bishop e2 always needs to be considered in these kind of situations. It's better though with the knight on h5. If my knight's on h5, well, we're going to have to move the bishop anyway. But if black has a knight on h5, regardless of the bishop on f4, if it's on e3 or whatever, you can oftentimes play bishop e2. Someone here played bishop takes e5. That's a very strange move. So I think this deserves consideration, no? Caden Trough managed to beat Indich. Wow. 2016. The same guy has 2 games. A guy I've never heard of. Sasha Rezan. It must be some Croatian player. I've never heard of him. But I don't know everybody. That's pretty impressive. He's 2-0 there with bishop e2. But anyway, knight takes e5. This is my experience with bishop h2 is that it can kind of end up out of play. But I think our options here are like bishop e2 or knight takes e5. If knight e5, bishop e5. Bishop e5, queen e5. Why would black play the game here? Okay, black played a game here with d takes. This is very risky though, you know. What about queen takes? Queen cakes. How bad is it? We can't keep control of the dark squares. g5 is too extreme. a5, bishop d7. Computer wants to play knight b1, knight a3, knight c4. That's pretty sophisticated stuff right there. All right. So after knight e5, bishop h2, giving you the light square bishop. I mean, your main game is the dark squares here. I'm not that interested in the light square bishop. If our strategy is to control the dark squares, and there's a bishop on h2, what are we doing after we take his bishop on d3? I don't understand like what our plan is there. This just doesn't feel like a plan. So you took the bishop on d3, but now the guy has this like annoying pressure on d6. But okay, I don't know what Velimirovich would say about this position, Mr. Slow. I mean, it's true that black's bishops are good, right? We have good bishops. The queen's gonna have to move to a different square. You know, it can't just stay on e7. So we're totally changing plans with black now. You could play for f5. It's going to be very double-edged, and your queen's going to have to be in a different place. Goes here. Now, for example, e5. I got to imagine that white is better after e5. This isn't the kind of position that white can screw around. that bishop on h2 comes to life with e5, which is very important. You take out the base of black's pawn chain at d6, and you're going to have a monster piece on e5. If I take, like, what am I going to do now? Maybe bishop f5? But I still think that white is clearly better. White has a huge pawn on d5. Zebra in. +2. Oh, is that all? So I don't like what black did here. It goes against the plans. You know, I think the plan is to control the dark squares. Just stick to the plan, man. With knight takes c3, you're going on a different plan. And if you're going to do this, then... I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, maybe we need to consider f6. I really hate to suggest this. My friend Emil the farmer would occasionally, you know, he would occasionally be known to play something like f6. Under the theory that just because we played f6 doesn't mean we can't play f5 later. So you're suggesting knight takes f3 instead. Well, we don't have to do anything. You don't have to take anything. Of course knight takes f3. Knight takes f3, queen takes f3, bishop e5. That's the normal strategy. We're trading the dark squares because this is not exactly a good idea. I mean, preventing e5 is a good reason not to play. I mean, preventing e5 is a good reason to play f6. As you guys know, f6 blocking bishops on g7 is not generally a good idea in the Benoni. But this is kind of an exceptional position. I mean, I would imagine that this is a huge threat, right? But in the meantime, black might be able to do some weird shit with like g5, h5. I don't know. You know, you have to be creative. But this is definitely going off. You know, he's just like taking a bishop because it's a bishop, and he doesn't have a long-term plan. After this, queen takes e3, I am immediately playing e5. And white has a huge edge. But he doesn't pull the trigger on it. He plays knight d2. Idea, what? Knight c4? But it's a little slow, right? Compared to e5 right away. Now, maybe white's thinking is like, okay, this is not a big deal because now I can do f4. Maybe white's still better. I mean, black plays queen g5. You're not even threatening anything. I guess queen g5 doesn't do anything really at all. I mean, it looks nice to have your queen there. Maybe you can play f5 at some point in the future. You're still going to get wrecked with like f4 and e5. So, okay. Schumacher knows how to play the white side of the Benoni, but I'm not sure he understands how to play the black side of the Benoni yet. Knight c4. And d6 is hanging. Now black played f5. So any sort of materialistic player here is going to take the pawn on d6. But there's another possibility. I think that at this point white has a serious debate. Do you want to take the pawn on d6 or do you want to just avalanche black's Swiss village due to melting glaciers? I like to stay on top of current events here. Avalanche. The problem is the center. This is the center. And if you do the math, you're going to see that white's control of the center is superior to black's control of the center. Am I making sense? Who has better control of the center here? No, I mean, pawn is a pawn, but it doesn't smash black. You know, winning this pawn doesn't destroy black. But I think like smashing through with e5, ramming this passer down his throat is going to be pretty difficult to handle. If his only counterplay is like f4, which is vague at best, I think we're still crushing black. But instead he grabs the pawn. It's good, but not as good. Maybe it's still good enough. Black plays f4. Now the knight is hanging. He trades, but this develops black's pieces for him. Uh-huh. That knight on e8, man. What do you guys think about that? Let's just look at this for a second. f4. You have a choice. You can take the pawn on b7. There are some weird threats, like maybe some kind of decoy. You can take this knight, helping black develop and coordinate all of his pieces, or you can go back to c4. Now this could run into b5. There still is b6 square. I don't know. Actually, b5 doesn't seem to work. You're not coordinated. Your rooks aren't connected. This looks bad, man. But knight takes e8 is a really bad move. Coordinating black, now black's fully developed. Now black's going to kill you with f3. And then queen h5, sorry, queen f3, h5, threatening, well, possibly bishop g4. Or maybe bishop e5 followed by bishop g4. He played bishop g4 immediately. White takes, queen d3. And now bishop d4. And now white needs to really have a serious discussion with himself. With the London system bishop, white's in a lot of trouble. But it definitely took a lot of help by white to make this possible, you know. Now we're going to take on d4. And, you know, that almost looks like it might be not so bad for white. But check, and if you take, there's f3 style stuff coming down. Well, no matter what you do, I mean, f3. I think that white needs to seriously consider king h1. But it still doesn't mean f3 is like a lot less dangerous. This is still a very dangerous concept, I think. So he takes, f3. White would be alright if he had like one more move, probably. I wouldn't mind an extra e5 right about now. Or d6 or something, you know. If I could only trade queens, if the pawn was on d6, I could trade queens with queen d5. White probably has like full compensation with sacrifice exchange. It looks like he's getting mated here. This is a cute move. But how do you decide? How do you decide? You could play rook f7. You could play rook e7. You could play rook f4. Or you could play king f7. That's a tough call. I mean, you've got like 4 different ways to checkmate white. And I mean, how do you decide on which one? I mean, dude, that's pretty tough. It honestly looks like even rook takes f3 might almost work. That must have been a tough call for black there. All right, next game. Move 11 versus Umerpai. No, interesting to see Schumacher playing against the Benoni, or playing the Benoni. Schumacher versus Schumacher. What's up, guys? I almost forgot. Tomorrow's Friday, and we have a Blitz stream that I do on Fridays. Also, please donate some gift subs. Now! Start a hype train. Wait for it. There's a fruit fly. You're gonna see the death of a fruit fly. He's just not staying in... He's not staying in the... There he is. Get out of here. Dude, what do you want? My coffee? Where's Mr. Coffee? Yeah, he's on my coffee. He's crawling in the coffee cup. There he goes. Alright, go in there. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, go in there. Come on. He's suspicious. It's a trap. Bro, why are you standing on the edge of the coffee cup? Go in the coffee cup. Dude's so smart. He's not going in. Alright, this is move 11. Move 11 never here for the streams. Just watches the VOD. I also like playing knight f3. It's a fort fly. Yeah, I've talked about this a lot on the stream. There's this claim that they don't bite. It's bullshit. They totally bite me. It's not like itchy. You just feel little mild. They don't bite, they nibble. You know what I mean? It's a difference. They just nibble, and I'm like refuting the scientific evidence that fruit flies don't bite. I've been reading a lot of science articles lately, Chess Zebra. There was this new study that says they've extended the life in lab rats by 25% or even up to 30%. With a couple of anti-cancer drugs. Imagine the effect it would have on fruit flies. Alright. Knight f3, bishop g4. That's supposed to be the best move, but in this line, like, white normally like gains the bishop pair. Bishop e2. And now, oddly, everyone who seems to play this line for black, they don't seem to know they're supposed to play bishop takes f3 here. It is kind of a weird line. See, like my leg is itchy right now, and I'm not crazy. The thing bit my leg. But the itchiness only lasts for like less than a minute. It's very brief. Bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, queen check, queen e5 check. I think the computer agrees that this is one of black's best tries, but white seems to maintain like a very slight edge. I like king f1. Again. There's even queen e2. Bashes Garcia, Guillermo. Alright, bishop e2. Bishop g4. Now knight f6. Now there's the question. There's no time for aren't you supposed to play knight c6 here? Where's move 11? He's supposed to play knight c6. Somewhere I recently saw this. I had another lesson with someone who had a game in the same type of line. Black's supposed to play knight to c6 now. And there he is. Okay. Knight f6 is a mistake. Right. Well, I played it once. But I can't remember where I saw this recently. I did a lesson with one of my students recently where we went over a game, but like the same thing happened. I don't remember who that was. It wasn't you. It could have been a very slightly different position. Yeah, they're supposed to play knight of 6. Player, Sparkle Horse says black. No, I don't have any games with knight of 6. Different position. Huh. Weird. I don't normally play the queen d5 Scandi. Anyway. It must have been an offhand game. But anyway. This is a slight mistake. So h3 is good. Bishop f3, bishop f3. Obviously black doesn't have to play bishop takes f3. So if they play bishop h5, what are you going to do? You're going to play d4. It's like a fucking bird, man. It's back again. It got bigger. So if bishop h5, what do you do? I feel like I had this position with black, man. No games. Bishop h5, e6. Why is this so familiar to me? Someone in the last 2 weeks I looked at this with. Castles, c6, c4, queen a5, knight c3, and I was talking about busting them with d5. Nobody remembers. c4 before d4? That would be rather rare. But I think objectively you need both. Brian Smith. d5. We're trying to play d5 and blow them out. So you're saying if like bishop h5, c4, this has been played. Interestingly enough, Baklan played it against Bartoshi Daniel, the Hungarian Romanian, who I know. Transylvanian Hungarian player. c4 is possible. Yeah, I would assume queen d8. But that can't be bad for white. Someone played queen d6. This could transpose to a kind of queen d6 line. You would think. I don't like Bartoshi's move. It's kind of weird to play queen a5 here without the retreat back to, to the diagonal. But I guess it doesn't really matter. You can always play c6 on the next move. That's what happened. But I think the question is like when white is going to play d5, and can white play d5 as a pawn sacrifice? Man, I cannot for the life of me remember who I was looking at this with. It was a stronger player. I mean, I was going over this type of position with a player who was not a weak player, fairly advanced player. Maybe it was Yabatis, I don't know. That doesn't make sense. Like, he wouldn't be playing this with white. He's not playing e4 a lot. I don't know who it was. Anyway, this doesn't look bad for you. So you went to the end game. Yeah. I mean, again, like King F1. King F1 needs to be considered move 11. You can always just like walk your king manually to G2, and you're slightly better. But then again, Queen E2 seems good. So, you got this endgame. Queen E2, King E2, and then black, well, it doesn't have a lot of options. You could play Knight C6 theoretically. Black could play that move. And I would assume you should smash their pawn structure. But black would have a powerful square for the knight on D5. Probably wouldn't quite justify the structural damage to his position. Anyway, C6. So this is interesting. There's 6 games where this has happened. This guy just became a GM, no? Or he won the African Championship. Belicine, African champion. So a whole bunch of players here. Someone lost to Kovalenko. That was in 2010. It's easy to do. Zweigen Malikov draw, 2004. The only elite game. Romanian game, 2023. Nanu's 25-24. Alright, Agapov. So, D3 is a new move. So why is D4 better than D3? Move 11 here playing very conservatively with D3. But it's lower risk, With D4, your pawn is more exposed. At the same time, you could possibly blast it open with like D5. But I guess the problem is if you don't do D4, then it's hard to do anything. I mean, maybe you can play for B4, B5. Like a wing gambit Sicilian. I mean, a structure like D3, A3, B4, something along those lines. But I think if you don't have a break, you can't win the game. Ultimately, black sits there with that. They sit there with their pawns on light squares and be like, what are you going to do to me? Come and get me. Black's pretty solid. So we'll see. E6, knight D2. You're playing it like a King's Indian, sort of King's Indian attack. I like it. White's a little bit better, but it's still going to be very hard to do anything to black. How are you going to break them down? Maybe a Magnus like H4, H5 on the king's side. Have you thought about going maybe just a kingside pawn storm, is your best bet. You should go with G3, and then H4. And if they don't do anything, you play H5. If they don't do anything there, you play H6. If they play H6, well, that's probably what they should do. They should set up H6, and then it's going to be hard. If you try to play G4, G5, you'll lose the F4 square, so black can try to sit a piece on F4. So I don't know exactly what to do. The minute you play G4, you lose F4. If you try to play H4, H5, they'll play H6. Maybe you could do something like just try to grab space on both sides of the board and squeeze them like a lobster. So this is kind of what happened here. Bishop C7, A4, the lobster, anti-lobster, knight on BD2, A5. That's a huge threat on the other side. Black's forced to play A6. I mean, it's the same thing as over here, but they can't allow you to play A6. They would be dead. And now Rook A3. I was thinking of Rook H4 on the other side. You're doing Rook A3. This is good. Here. Trades pieces. Yeah, I mean, you need a way to open the game for your two bishops. Queen side is gone. How are you going to break open the position? There goes the king side. Oh, you played c4. Get a koala. Why would you play c4? That's such a committal move. You've been so careful. So I expect you to play now bishop d2, rook a1, rook a4, rook c4, squeeze them on both sides. Imagine playing c4 here. This is like a disaster. c4 is a horrifying move. But it's funny that they played knight f6. I expected black to play knight e7 and try to play knight f5, knight d4 check. They must have seen through your plan of g4. I mean, there you lose the g6 and f4. This isn't good either. Move 11 played fine. I mean, why don't you just play bishop d2? You're clearly better here. There's absolutely no reason to play this move c4. This is a very strange move. Making your own pawn backward along the d-file, you have zero risk in this position. You're just calmly playing bishop d2, swing the rook over, rook up here, maybe h4, h5. You got lobster on the king side, crab on the queen side. And maybe it's a draw, but you can still sort of try to squeeze black. But this is really bad move. It looks like, I don't know. Are we going to sacrifice a piece or something crazy? And what do we do on knight e7? Because I really don't like this. That's a huge problem. As I said, if g4, knight g6, you still have problems. So, it really comes down to one move. But knight f6 isn't great. Now black understands what they're doing, though. So now it's like equal, right? Black's got a kind of equal game. You tried to avoid the exchange of bishops. Maybe that's a good practical decision. Now you can get ops color bishops. Bishop ops. Claiming a draw. Well, now you have a chance, though, don't you? Now you have a chance to like fix your mistake and play b4, b5 on the queen side. I don't like what you did here with rook g1. Oh, I see. Okay, I get it. You're going here. You're going g3 and f3. That's cute. Maybe black should play h5. Early and often. If h5, you'll have to switch plans. Maybe play h4. He missed the idea. Ah. And so it goes. He missed the crafty idea. What we really need now is b4, b5. An ingenious way of keeping your winning chances alive. Oof. Oh, that was it. There you totally like snuck in with that. Rook h5, g takes h. Well, your rook isn't like fully stuck, right? You could always play rook b4 or rook a3. It's just a pawn. You can play rook b4, can't you? I mean, now you had no choice. But I'm just saying, like, if it was your turn in this position, you could play rook b4, and you could slowly engineer your way out of it with like b3, rook a4. But he played the mouse slip, rook h5. He offered a take back, but move 11 was like, no take backs. That was tricky. You saw everything. All right. Yeah, no, I don't understand why you played c4. He just hung a rook, yeah. But if he doesn't hang a rook, he's still in trouble. Maybe it's a draw. But as I said, I think you can play rook b4. He can't really afford to give you the f7 pawn. He's somewhat paralyzed. He can't move his bishop without dropping e5, or maybe he can. So what are you thinking? He can play, maybe he can play bishop c5? Then you have rook c3. So you think he has this? You have rook c3. It's like whatever he tries, you have a sort of way around it. Like bishop e4, okay, fine, but now his e5 pawn's hanging. So anyway, it might be a draw, but black has to play really well, I think, to hold the draw here. Oh, the computer disagrees. He has a move, rook h4. Why is that so good? He could just go back. Oh no. So he could probably force a draw. He probably meant to play rook h4 when he mouse slipped. But if he doesn't play rook h4, I would think he would be better after rook b4. He has to take this repetition draw. But I didn't realize he could force that. I mean, if you play like g5, rook g4, you're going to lose the pawn. Yeah. So, but anyway, you don't deserve to win after playing c4. I mean, to be honest. That was a really strange and uncharacteristic move. Okay, Nefedov is up next. I've got games from Nefedov and Shaki to go. Guys, please donate gift subs. Start a hype train. Donate a koala. Come on. We're going to be back with Blitz tomorrow. It's been a slow month. Make it great again. Make our trade war great again. Nefedov is late. 77777. 5 sevens. Black was trying to play rook h4 and he hung the rook. So Radusa was here earlier. So this is Nefedov's Sveshnikov game. You know, I think the 95, you know, it might be as good or better than the main lines, objectively. There's a reason why Caruana was playing that, you know, in his World Championship match against Carlsen. I wouldn't mind seeing them play again. We've talked a lot about boring World Championship matches, but Caruana Carlsen wasn't bad. It was actually interesting. I wouldn't mind Caruana again. I prefer to see Caruana than Hikaru. Okay, bishop g5, a6, knight a3, b5, knight d5, bishop e7. Why does no one play queen a5 check here? You know, interesting factoid. Almost everyone plays bishop d2. And then queen d8, draw, or c4. But what about this c3? Is there anything to this? Knight takes e4. Bishop e3. Entrapped queen. Now rook b8 is forced. Mrs. Mary E. Jones. Wow. There's, man, Munoz Pantoja, 1992. Is that a different Munoz Pantoja? 92. Knight C2. Huh. Yeah, once I had a game where I was analyzing it and I saw this as possible. Well, that's weird. That's even weirder. The same guy was white against two different people, 2 different years. Party! Acerbate with the party. Eucalyptus party. We're up. We're wide. We're living wide here. 16 viewers. Worldwide. I'm just thinking about this. You know, on the Queen A5 check, Bishop D2 is main line. C3, Knight to C4. Bishop E3. Rook B8. Bozidar Ivanovic. Knight C2. So it's like a pawn sack. We just don't have quite enough compensation. Knight F6. B4, Queen D8. Or Knight F6, G takes F. G3. I think I had a blitz game once. So it's not enough. It's just not quite enough. Okay. But anyway, the point is, I think that black should be aware that this is a viable alternative to... It could be very frustrating for players with white, especially if they don't know what they're doing, you know? A lot of people don't know what they're doing. So bishop e7, take, and then I've always played c3, but the statistics here are really worth noting. Knight b1. c4 is the other main line, and I've always been dogmatically afraid of, personally, the dark squares. White doesn't have a dark square bishop, so it seems counterintuitive for us to permanently weaken our dark squares, right? And like most players, I'm afraid of doing that. But I think that I'm guilty of being dogmatic. People do claim that this might be white's best try here. White has some very, very slight edge. Pomniachi Carlsen. Carlsen never loses. Draw, win. Alright, there's only 3 games there by Magnus. But anyway, okay, c3, same as I played. Black now castled. Nefedov plays knight c2, and then the main line traditionally is bishop g5, but Radusa played the same move against me and Nefedov and I, rook b8, which was played against me by Antich years ago. I showed you guys in the database on the stream last night, and I played this b4, and it's a weird move, you know. I mean, b4 isn't so great. First played by Judit in '94. Later by me. No, it was played by Bojkovic against Sveshnikov in '79. I forgot. Anyway, so b4 isn't so great, but it prevents the b pawn from coming down. It fixes the pawn on b5, and you're gonna play a4. The point of rook b8 is to attack b2, so it makes it problematic to play a4. They take, and your b2 pawn is weak. So the idea of b4 is to circumvent that. I mean, if black can play rook b8, I figure I can play rook, b4. If black can take the time to play rook b8, why can't I take the time to play b4? But b4 is probably not white's best move. So h4 is the main move. Nefedov plays h4. This is very aggressive, though. I mean, just because Kasparov played it or somebody, doesn't mean that Nefedov should play it. Maybe. The other thing is, like, if you don't play something, black's going to play a5 in a lot of cases. And then there's a question about, well, where am I going to put my? Where should I put my bishop? Should I put my bishop on e2, or should I put my bishop on d3? If I put my bishop on e2, it blocks. Sorry, if I put my bishop on e2, it blocks my queen. If I put it on d3, it blocks the queen frontally. Blocks my control of d5. So I don't know. You know, I don't really know what white should do. I know my b4 isn't enough. This is kind of committal. That seems to be the main line. Okay, the standard plan is to play h4 and later play like g3. So you can still castle kingside after doing this. You know, the idea, of course, is bishop takes h4, queen h5. White can still play g3. So let's see what happened now. Black plays g6. You're allowing white to potentially play h5, but you're giving your bishop retreat square. You're threatening bishop takes h4, right? This is standard. You really want to be exciting. You could play knight takes f6 check. Elena Dembo. Very exciting. G3. So this is due to Carlsen 2019. So Carlsen 2019. G3 is standard. And now interestingly, almost everyone here played bishop g7. But why? They played bishop g7 because, fill in the blank, they want to play f5, I guess. Handful of players played bishop e6, h5, bishop e7. It's like the Spanish, you know, this bishop is, it's fairly well placed where it is. It doesn't need to move. But Redusa played a5 here. Now I'm thinking that most people play bishop g7 because the plan is to play f5. Rook b8. What's the point of rook b8? Rook b8 to prevent white from playing a4. But he goes ahead and plays a5. Now this is almost never seen. Shabalov Karlov, 1998. I mentioned this earlier today. You know who Karlov's trainer must have been? It must have been Sveshnikov. Because Karlov, I went to the National Open once in the early 90s, and I think that Sveshnikov was there with him. I also remember clearly, you know, Karlov playing the c3 Sicilian against me. Karlov just happens to play the c3 Sicilian and the Sveshnikov. What a coincidence, right? So after a5, I mean, maybe the point is like, what is black doing? Maybe a5 doesn't do anything. But I don't understand what happens here, right? Nefedov could play a3. Shaba played knight on c, e3. Someone played, you can see here against Omar Cartagena, someone played bishop h3. The thing about bishop h3 is that this makes a lot of sense. To trade your bad bishop for black's good bishop. And even like bishop takes h3 is not a problem. You can bring the rook back and castle by hand or whatever with king f1, king g2. But my experience has been that such plans are met by bishop e6. And then you're just stuck there, you know. Basically, you don't really want to take on e6. So then you're just stuck doing like king g2, bishop g7, king, you know, king f1, king g2. All right. I think this is reasonable for both sides. Maybe that's a reasonable way to play it. So g6, g3 is fine, and then a5, okay? And now Nefedov reacts with a3. He doesn't have to do this, obviously. The question is black threatening? Is b4 a threat, or, you know, or what? You know, why did black play a5? He thinks it's like a minority attack or something. But yeah, I don't think that's the plan. You know, he's supposed to play like bishop g7 and f5. I'm not sure that black is doing himself any favors by doing this. He just made his own b5 pawn weaker. So now a3, preventing a sort of non-existent threat. And now bishop e6, which is a new move. A neutral move. Now Nefedov could do like what I did in my game, like b4 at some point. He could definitely play b4. It does create a backward pawn here. So I'm not sure you should. I'm just saying it's a possibility. So the Nefedov plays bishop h3, which is obviously not forced. You could play a lot of things. Bishop pretty much anywhere. But after this, bishop g7 finally. And here Nefedov, my opinion would be that the normal approach would be the hand castle with king f1, king g2. It's a normal plan, a5 and b4. Yeah, I mean, I know. Sort of. But it's one of those things where you're just not sure if it's a good idea or it's just like weakening his white squares. You could call it a minority attack. But I think Nefedov didn't know what to do. I think we go here, and then, I don't know, after that. What's going on after king f1? Let's see if there's any games on lichess. There probably are. Yeah, white lost both. So king f1's a mistake. Okay, well, there's nothing wrong with Shaba's plan. This is what Nefedov did. They allow b4. So apparently this has been played. This is, look at the score, 0-4. It's 0-5 now because Nefedov lost 2. The engine says that white is better by 0.1, and white has scored 0 out of 5. But the thing is, like, you're with this tension with these bishops here, and you can't just leave the tension forever. At some point, somebody has to exchange bishops. White can't castle, and white's king is in the center of the board. So, black played b4. I would assume we play a b4 to open the rook. And that's what Nefedov did. There was one game where someone played c takes b4. I just don't really think this pawn's like going anywhere, you know, personally. I don't know. I'm not a big believer in that. I don't think our A pawn is getting escorted down the board and is a crushing pass pawn, you know. I like what Nefedov did better. A, B, A, B. What I didn't understand is how black ended up with a pawn on b2. Nefedov's leaving his king in the center, man. He played the exact move that was played in this game from 2022. But we can't just leave our king in the center, man. It's an open Sicilian. Why not king f1? Because we have issues? Let's see. King f1 is okay. So, Uber driver would frown on this. Leaving her king in the center. Rook a6. B takes c. Oh, I see. It was a sacrifice. That's how that happened. See, I didn't realize Nefedov was up a piece. Do you know how fast they played this, by the way? This was 10-0. I was playing on the stream, and I looked, and they're you know, blacks used 2 minutes. White has used 2.5. They still have 7 minutes left, and there's a black pawn on b2, you know? Well, I'm sorry, I'm taking here. Like, Nefedov is, you know, this is insane. I mean, you're letting this guy have a pawn on the 7th, try to grab that knight on c6? I would be terrified. I would be absolutely terrified of that pawn on b2. So, in fact, in the one game where this was played in Blitz between two 22 plus players, White did recapture with the pawn. Black played bishop takes, then he got his rooks forked with queen c8. Oof. That's not good. So that's what happens when you leave your king in the center. Play moves like rook a6. So Nefedov never should have played rook a6. He should have played king f1. Bring the king to g2. And it's a game. Alright. Anyway, rook a6, b takes c. You know, maybe Nefedov saw that tactic. But hold on a second. So the guy has it right away, like bishop takes h3. You have bishop takes, rook takes, queen c8 right away. Well, it's not check now, but it's still good, right? Rook takes, queen takes. Yeah, it's still good for black. So black actually made a mistake by taking. He could have done the tactic right away. I see. Strange. Oh, I see. So you take on, yeah, on here you take on c6. And that's okay. So he has to do the trade first. I see. And so now b takes. If Nefedov was sensible, he would take here. And again, if bishop takes c6, you can do rook takes c6. Even though black has the two bishops, white is okay. You can play h5 and then walk your king over here. It's instructive. But I think this is suicidal, allowing this pawn on the 7th. This is extremely dangerous. d4 square is screaming. Right, with the knight on c6 it is. Yeah, I mean, this is... You know, you're blockading b1 with the queen. So Nefedov was a little optimistic here, right? I don't know how much he calculated. Obviously, like, bishop takes h3, rook takes h3, queen d7 doesn't work because you can move the rook back, and on queen takes c6, you got 97. Maybe he calculated that. But after queen b1, black plays queen a5 check. We can't put the king on f1 without dropping the rook, or we can. Why can't you play king f1 here? Yeah. Question. Because of the knight fork on e7, there's a couple things. There's this, right? But here we have king g2. So after queen a5 check, Nefedov played knight c3. You know, you also have to consider king e2. It looks more risky than king f1. But as well, you still can't take the rook on c6. And that leaves your rook covering here. Bishop takes h3, rook takes h3, queen a1 still doesn't work. So it's all hell breaks loose after f5. But okay, it's safer to play king f1. Let's do king f1. Bishop h3, check. What's the problem? Rook takes h3, queen a1, knight c3, and white's lost after rook f c8. I have to just say that, like, I would have not calculated all of it. I would have just said, there's no way I'm allowing a pawn on the 7th rank. You know, not for a knight, not for a rook, whatever. You know, it was very optimistic by Nefedov. I don't think this is a question of being able to calculate everything. Like, he was just too careless in terms of the potential danger here. I'm not surprised at all that black has a win. Although black really played very fast to calculate all this out. Black kind of needs to calculate. I think white can intuitively... Ooh, bishop a2. Does that work? Yeah, that's the engine #1 move. So by the way, like, after this, Queen b1 is forced. Queen a5 check is engine number 1 move. I would have played king f1. And you're apparently lost anyway. Bishop h3, rook takes, queen a1, and then knight c3, and like I said, rook fc8. Ah. But you got to admit, this is pretty ridiculously crushing. But again, Nefedov made it all possible that leaving his king in the center against a tactical player. You're asking for trouble. Bishop a2, castles, bishop b1, and you're lost. You might say, well, black's a computer or something, but I don't know about that. I think it's all reasonable, especially for a Sveshnikov player who's used to playing this type of stuff. Too reckless by Nefedov. Although the system is okay. It looks like everything was okay until you played rook a6. So just king f1 instead. The computer even doesn't mind rook a6. I just don't see why we need to play rook a6. Why do we need to play that? Why can't we just play a normal move here? King f1. Alright, next is Shaki Ilya. Why are we not on the initial position? Oh, you put in a position. Shaki put in a position? Is this like a... Oh, what's up, WJ Loof? Long time no see. WJ Loof takes little breaks and then comes back. Ilya, was this like from position blitz tournament or something? I don't know if Shaki's still here. C5's, wait. What is this? Oh, queen b3, yeah. Queen b3 is not too good. Oh man, I was going over a Nimzovich game. Woof. Who was it? It was Bagalyabov Nimzovich. Bagalyabov played queen b3 against Nimzovich. So I don't know. I played this once too. I lost horribly against an FM, a strong FM years ago. Queen c2 is the better move, but it's also more of a main line. Queen b3, you know, the funny thing is, sometimes people play other moves. You had root canal, nice. It's a great reason to watch the stream. Speaking of root canal, I haven't been to the dentist in a while. I'm going to need a root canal if I don't go for more regular dentist appointments. C5 is the best move here. And I was trying to figure out what the difference is. So if you play queen c2 and black plays c5, white takes, and now if black plays knight c6, you know, the nice thing is that we're not in the way of this b pawn. White can play a3, white can play knight f3, and if bishop takes c5, for example, we can play a3. And white is slightly better. But if you try to play the same way with the queen on b3, like here, c5 takes, it's interesting. It's really interesting how much better this is for black, because the queen is so stupid on b3. And I think this is, you know, oddly enough, the game that I lost years ago, my opponent played knight a6. And this is probably slightly better for white. This variation has gone out of fashion, in fact. Black actually transposes to a queen c2 classical Nimzo. Nimzovich was right all those years ago that black's best move is knight c6 here. And after knight f3, bishop takes c5 isn't necessary because black has this. Black equalizes. And the funny thing was, against Bagayabov, we shouldn't be looking at the lichess database here. Look at the score. Black is plus after 94. This is the point. That can't be played with the queen on c2. This is basically why the Spielman variation or whatever isn't good. And the irony is that I've seen a lot of people play like a5 and stuff, but it's not good either. You know, c5 is the move, and then after c5, d takes c5, your opponent makes a mistake here. Knight c6 is clearly best. Interestingly, after knight f3, knight e4, bishop d2, Nimzovich didn't play knight takes d2 against Bagayabov. And I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm thinking, oh, we lost our camera. I'm thinking that literally Nimzovich knew that knight takes d2 was a good move, but he didn't play it. I mean, the point was like, Bagayabov was a freaking maniac, and he's white, and Nimzovich wants to beat him. So, it's not like Nimzovich didn't know that knight takes d2 is a good move and black like equalizes here. He wanted more, so he actually played the less strong but playable knight takes c5. And he went on to beat Bagayabov, who castled queenside like a nutcase and lost a horrible game. But it's interesting that a grandmaster would not play knight c6. It's like clearly black's best move in this position. Knight a6 merely transposes to a classical. After a3, you should play a3, and then like knight takes c5, of course not possible. So black plays bishop takes c3 usually, queen takes c3, and this transposes after knight takes c5. But you should be a little bit better there. There's a lot of theory. I don't know about this, but that doesn't look right. You know, how in the world can black play with a knight on a6, bishop on c5? That's pretty weird. That doesn't seem right to me. But then again, white's queen isn't right either. So, okay. That's the story of the opening anyway. Your grandmaster opponent played knight a6. You played g3. Well, is the problem knight e4 again? Looks like you're up for knight e4 again. It's even stronger here because there's no bishop d2. So he didn't know that. Can he play knight e4? I don't understand why this isn't good. Maybe bishop g2? It still looks good for black. Yeah, he can do this. Wow. Wow. That's wild. Whoa, check this line out. Queen a5, bishop takes e4, knight takes c5. That's pretty cool, huh? Yeah, g3 is too slow. But black doesn't even try to refute it. He just castles. This is okay, too. The computer claims queen a5 is best right away. That's not easy to play. Normally, it's not so good. I would have probably played knight e4. And if black doesn't find that line with queen a5, then maybe it's not so bad for you. So he played routinely. You played bishop g2. And now he traded on c3 for no reason. Excuse me? That's a terrible move. That is an absolutely horrifying move by black. This guy should have his Grandmaster title taken away. I guess this is a simul or something. That's like the worst move ever. You should be like stripped of the GM title. He just voluntarily gave you his bishop for nothing. Nice. Okay. We're happy about that. Queen takes. Knight takes c5. And now you're more or less in the game. 2 bishops. You played bishop g5. Alright. Now is black threatening... Is he threatening something? I think here you're making a very serious mistake with bishop g5. The question is, do you have an alternative? Well, yeah, I mean, you do. I mean, what happens after knight f3? Alexander Naumenko. Because I don't think like putting it on h3 is very promising. Although even that's possible. Yeah, okay, b6 is a good answer by this guy. There was a game with knight f3, b6. Black's pretty solid. He is pretty solid. But, this I don't like, you know, because you're going to give back your bishop. But you didn't want to break the diagonal with knight f3. You're going to need to develop your pieces at some point. Oh no, you allowed knight e4? Another reason not to play this. Bishop takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop takes d8, knight takes c3, and now bishop c7. Classical Nimzo. Black can play knight e4 or knight a4. And e4 feels safer, but he probably anticipated bishop g2. Maybe that's not such a big deal. Black could always play f5. Or, you know, you do have f3 though. Maybe he didn't like f3, I think. Most likely. But I mean, the whole thing was a bad idea by black. I don't know what I would have done. I would have considered playing h6 if I were him, to be honest. I think he should consider h6 and take with the queen. And if you go into the endgame, I mean, I guess you're a little bit better. But he's the one who exchanged bishops on c3 for no reason. I don't know about bishop g5, though. It doesn't feel right. Maybe he can do something else. Yeah, just d6. Or even a5. I thought of that. Lichess would play like a5. It is not without risk. Yeah, you're actually all right. Bishop g5 might turn out to be a decent move. Because when you could have played knight f3 instead, I was saying knight f3. This b6 is pretty damn solid for black. Still, I think you're fine. This would have transposed. It turns out it would have transposed to a known variation. But bishop g5 was creative. Ops color bishops, good here. And now, if knight e4 again, f3, white is not worse. Definitely. But he goes knight a4, which he figured, well, it's all right. I mean, worst case scenario, he could put his knight on b6. Great square. Just he doesn't have a light square bishop anymore. Where's the guy's light square bishop? Has anybody seen my light square bishop? Man, so you strategically killed this guy. That's pretty funny. So I was thinking maybe f4, because we can preempt his ability to play e5. The only thing is that he could play a5, rook a6, and try to, you know, emeritate his way out of this with knight a8. That's kind of his only chance, right? Literally, the guy's only chance. Oh, his knight is... Well, I see. You're threatening to trap his knight. Oh, okay. So e4 directly traps the knight with c5. But can he still play e5? He does. Yeah, so he tried the only thing he could try. There's no other move. That's cute. And now he's trapped. Nice. Grandmaster. Grandmaster Ilya. I think he's an arena Grandmaster. Anyway, you were higher rated than him anyway. 2300 to 15. So we had one other game from the player that we don't know who it is. I don't know if this player is a subscriber to the channel or not. But we've time to do this game. What is the opening? Okay. So d4, d6, c4, e5. And I played this once 3 years ago at the World Senior for the first time against Heinrich Danielson. There's some games where, like, there's a very famous game. I think it was Polugievsky, Nesbedinov. So e takes d4. Queen takes d4. But Danielson did something like bishop e6 against me, which was totally new. Wilmoth. Somehow I feel like the move order was different, but how could it have been different? You would think like a game I played in the World Senior would be in the Opening Explorer by now. But I swear this is what happened. I didn't want to play e4. There was something with a5 very early. I don't know. Alright, whatever. So knight c3 is not the main move. I mean, the main move is knight f3. But knight c3, I mean, knight f3, e4, it's weird. This is actually probably white's best move. But most people play knight g5. I'm not sure. It's hard to judge. They're both possible. So, knight c3 is different. Black can play the old Indian. This is considered to be a main line. But again, Danielson surprised me with this bishop a6, e6 thing. I was completely taken aback by this. You know, Arkhill is playing at 2100 or something. You know, he's not afraid. I was a little reluctant to commit to an e4 structure here, not having faced this before. I forget what I did. I might have played b3 right away. But anyway, it's been a while ago. So knight c6 and now queen d1. Yeah, you're supposed to play queen d2. You're supposed to play queen d2, and the idea is b3, bishop b2, and your queen on d2. Queen on d2 is a profitable development. With queen d1, you're just going back. You've gained nothing from having moved your queen out. So I don't know if I like queen d1. There may be some advantages of queen d1. Perhaps the queen is less exposed. But you know, Danielson's idea is to put pressure on the c4 pawn. It makes some sense. So here is basically where I think we can still transpose after knight f3, but normally white will put the bishop on d3. Yeah, I don't know about bishop g4. That doesn't look right. I don't like it. I don't want to trade. Black doesn't really necessarily want to trade the white square bishop off. This is a bluff. And it's not a great bluff. He's practically forcing you to make the right move. You could play bishop e3. There might be some kind of Caruana-esque thing with bishop takes a c3 check. That's another reason, really another reason why you really should play. By the way, can black do that right away? Can't he just like take here? I'm not sure I love this for white. That's why I prefer to put the queen on d2. So, yeah, this is a blitz game. So, the power of the new always submits like blitz games. So this is a rapid game where he's using no time. But bishop takes c3 is going to be a problem. Castle, castle, and now very mindless move. I mean h3. I think that this still deserves consideration. And on rook e8, could we maybe try something Larry Kaufman-esque? I don't know, here? That probably doesn't work. So we'll have to play knight d2. And after bishop takes c2, queen takes c2. What's up? Knight d7. Idea bishop takes c3 in some positions. So instead you played the kind of standard h3, and now black trades. But I mean, what is black getting for this? What is black getting for this white square bishop? He's consistent, but he better hope that that white square bishop doesn't become a strong piece. Yeah, now that was a theme. Now black can play like knight c5, bishop takes c3, knight takes e4. Exactly. You could sacrifice a pawn. See, this is not really what white wanted. Two knights against bad bishop and knight, but white has very good control of d5. And like, that's a serious problem. So now, like, the queen can't go back to g7. And f6 is a fatal weakness in a lot of cases. I'll be able to play queen c3. You found a different way to attack f6 with queen f4. Now what about like the d4 square? Exactly. Bishop d1. This fruit fly is really annoying, man. They're impossible to catch too. Alright, Mr. Slow. I'm gonna use the dishwater. Rook c8. Queen g5. How much time? We're down to 2 minutes here at this point. Wow. We've actually used our time. Bishop g4, h5, bishop takes e6, f takes e6, now sack the exchange. First he does this. I was expecting some sort of exchange sacrifice. This looks plausible. I mean, this is fully playable for white. After this, like e5, queen takes a7. But you didn't do it. You played instead f4. And then a really tricky move, g3. I don't fully understand what's going on there. Someone's going to need to explain this to me. Why can't black take this pawn on h3? You still have the exchange sacrifice, but it's not all that much different than the other one. Rook takes d4, pawn takes d4, queen d4 check, e5. And now your g3 pawn is hanging. I think that white is like losing here. He is. Yeah. So this is really weird, man. I mean, the guy doesn't take on h3. Actually, the g3 move is a terrible mistake. I think even f4 is probably a mistake. Couldn't you just sack immediately? Rook takes. Computer doesn't think it's enough. Takes, queen takes check, king h6, and Sackfish thinks that black is winning. Wow. So I guess not. I guess we have a problem then. The whole thing was too optimistic. Let's see though. f4 might be okay. The problem is our rook is under attack here. So again, it's probably not enough. It's not enough. But it's very strange that black get bluffed out of this queen takes h3 when he has 4 minutes on the clock against 45 seconds. This is just weird. And now white's better, maybe. Now he sacks the exchange. For what? One pawn? This is random. Totally random. Now we're winning. This is a draw. The increment player. We're gonna flag the opponent, and it's silly. Okay, whatever, guys. All right, I'll see you guys later. Thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks for the crappy blitz game. I'll be back on Friday with blitz, real blitz tomorrow. Quality blitz, not like this where we're just flagging the other guy in a random situation. Real blitz tomorrow, 5+5. Bring your chess sets. I'll see you. Thanks WJ Luft. Thanks everybody for your support, and I'll see you tomorrow.